bit more. If you try to keep a optimal spacing, optimal position behind the tag from the start, before you use to movement in WVW, you will end up being separated a lot. And this is not only for firebrands, this is for all professions. So start from the tag, and as you get better, as the game slows down for you, and I promise you it will slow down as you get more experience, and you start to anticipate things better, you will be able to start dropping back off of the tag to your optimal positioning. Having said that, the optimal positioning for firebrands is about this distance from the tag. That is where you want to be. This is essentially where the backhand of the squat should be. Now it will stretch out in different circumstances a little bit more further back, and in certain circumstances it will bunch up a little bit further in. But in general, that is the distance. It's slightly about 2/3 of a dodge. So a dodge is 300 distance. So here is a dodge. As you can see, as soon as I dodge, the marker is slightly behind me. So this is about 250, 270 distance, something like that. That is your optimal positioning as a firebrand. The reason for it is because of the mantras. The mantras and the tom skill. Now, all of your mantras are very powerful, and I'll go over what they do and when you use them a little bit later. But right now, what you need to know is that they are cone-based, and they're cone-based in front of you. They do affect to the side and behind you, but that is a very small area. It's 180 away from you. So if I place this circle around me right here, it's the center is on top of me. 180 is where is the edge of that circle. So to the side and behind me, you can see I affect very close. You need to be very close. In front, however, the cone is up to 450 distance. So about that distance in front of me. That's as far as it goes. So if you are about 250 behind the tag, you can still, your cones will still affect to up to here in front of the tag. And that helps for situations where we're retreating or whatnot. It will help people. Having said that, if you're a player, FB, non-FB, it doesn't matter. If you end up in front of the tag, you need to reposition right away behind the tag, because this is, you see how little is the distance in front of the tag that you can receive some support. Beyond that point, you're not receiving any support. So if you end up with the tag at your back, you turn around, you show your back to the enemy, and you scamper as fast as you can until you get behind the tag, and the tag is between you and the enemy again. That's really imperative. So because of this, the firebrand, even though it's very tanky and it can take up all the damage on the front line, needs to be a little bit further back so that it can spread out its effects to pretty much everybody in the subgroup. Keep in mind, as a player that is not a firebrand, and you're depending on your firebrand to give you stability. Now, and other boons, obviously. Now, while you can get away with a little bit of positioning in depth that is different, you cannot get away with positioning wide. Out wide, the squat needs to be tight, because the firebrands cannot affect to the side. Now, I'll talk about turning and supporting your sub squat towards the end. Don't focus on that if you're new to firebrand. Focus on the basics first, and then as you get more comfortable and better at things, then you can start focusing on delivering on demand. So the first thing as a firebrand, when you're in squat, you click on your squat button. Right above the leave button, there is a check mark. It says view as grid. You uncheck that. That is for all support classes. Scrappers, if you're a support tempest, any any profession that its job is to support others, to do to deliver damage, to keep them alive, to cleanse conditions, to heal, whatnot. Any profession that has a role like that, you should be in non-grid view. It will put up your sub squad in party view for you to see. That way you can see conditions and you can see boons on them. So as a firebrand, you're looking for conditions and boons on the DPS in your sub squad. Generally on the DPS. The only time you're not doing that is if you are the FB or the scrapper in the tag subgroup. If the tag is in your subgroup, the only thing you're looking at is the tag, and you're using your skills based on the needs of the tag. Everybody else in that subgroup needs to be aware of that and needs to adjust their gameplay to that respect, knowing that the FB and the scrapper are going to be focused on the tag and delivering their skills on demand for the tag's needs. When the tag is not in your subgroup, however, you're looking for your DPS. You're looking what their needs are. If there is no stab, you're using a skill to deliver stab. If you see a lot of condies appearing, but there is no need for additional stability, you can be switching into Tome 2 using skill 5. That does a quick cleanse, heals, and it converts into boons. If you see, for example, people getting interrupted, you're using your elite mantra because that's an AoE stun break. Now it is a cone, like all the other mantras, so it has a directional use. So for example, if we've pushed through and then there's people behind getting caught, you can turn around, drop your mantra, turn around, and continue moving. That way you're supporting back. Now on pushes, I will go over the sort of a general few combinations of skills to use in different situations, but if you're in Tome 3, Resistance, which is skill 4, is still a very powerful skill. It no longer negates damage from damage delivering conditions, however, it negates effects from mobility impeding conditions. That is chill, that is slow, that is emo. That is very important, especially in melee pushes in deep. So if we push deep into them, they start interrupting people. You drop that. Any people with emote, they will retain the emote on them, but will be able to keep on moving. If there is a bubble, they will be able to keep on moving, even if they get emote put on them. So that is very important. If you're in Tome 3, you're not only using your skill 5, Epilogue of Unbroken Lines, you're also using your skill 4, Stalwart Stand. For that reason, it's only resistance, it pulses in one place, it allows the back line to run through it and get pulsing resistance and get them through. Very important, especially for the tail, because they're going to run onto it. Just as the revs roads provide stability, pulsing stability, this provides sort of immunity to movement impeding conditions. In terms of utility skills, you're generally gonna have a few high value skills. Your heal skill was going to be the heal mantra of solace. That one's sort of non-negotiable. Your elite skill is going to be the mantra of liberation. That one is also non-negotiable because of the utility they bring. Now the heal skill, there is a bit of a change that this is recent. It now provides resolution and protection, which it didn't used to. But it no longer provides Aegis. So in terms of approaching for range spikes, this changes things a little bit. because you no longer can apply Aegis with your heal skill, in addition to stability with your elite. So before you used to use, you're approaching for a range spike, you use 1, 2 mantras, and you're set up. You have Aegis and you have stability. Now you need a different source for Aegis. That could be being in May Shield to apply it, for example. Uh, Shield 4, and then you turn into your staff so that you can put lines out there, symbols and whatnot to help out with the range spike. The other skills, generally, I would say there's 2 that are quite essential. Hollow Ground, I will explain this one real quick. This one is not necessarily always 100% of the time being used, but it's a very, very high value skill. It is a pulsing area skill that you can place anywhere. It's quite big, and it pulses both resolution and stability, has 8 pulses every second, and it's a combo fire field. So it has a lot of powerful uses, especially if there is a fight that is happening at our feet and we need stability. You can drop it at our feet. We're brawling it out on this spot, let's say, on top of the marker. Drop it at your feet. It's going to give stability and allow us to move around in this small area and avoiding specific spots of heightened damage. And at the same time, any blast will connect, give extra power, extra might, and whatnot. And it gives resolution, which lowers damage coming from condies. So it is quite a powerful skill. It's very good for pushing through chokes. You can place it in the choke. Let's come over here, for example, between the rock and the tree. Think of this as a choke, and we're going to be pushing through. You drop them, and you can go through, because you're going to have the stability being reapplied. Any kind of stripping, whatnot, of boons will not affect the squad, as it will get stability reapplied. It has the same effect as the roads. The roads, however, is a line that is forward, whereas this can be placed at a specific point where it's most needed. In addition, you have your stand your ground. Now stand your ground is an absolutely essential skill. You need to have it. You cannot not have it as a firebrand. This is also for guardians. For example, in a situation, if you're a DPS guardian and there isn't enough stability in your sub squad, for example, you don't have a firebrand, or the firebrand is newer, he's unable to cope. It will happen, or they're having lag issues, whatnot. Whatever the reason, you can put that skill. Sacrifice 1 DPS skill on your utility bar and put stand your ground. It applies 5 stacks of stability, and it applies resolution. Again, resolution lowers condi damage, and it also procs the crit chance for a lot of the DPS guardian builds. The 5 stacks of stability are very important on pushes, because you're going to be going through a lot of stuff that's going to consume those skills, those stacks of stability, even if boons do not get stripped. So 1 stack of stability is okay if we're exchanging range spikes and there's going to be a few AoEs at our feet that we're going to dodge out of quickly, basically to stop a pull. 1 stack is fine. However, when we're going to pushing through a choke, pushing into melee combat, you need more than 1 stack. So that's where stand your ground comes in. That is essentially the skill you're going to be using for the main engagement. You're saving that for the main engagement. Usually your tag will say big stab, or stand your ground, or defenses, for example. So that's what you're saving that skill for. Now, In terms of the sort of last utility skill, there's a few different skills. You can go with Mantra of Lore, which is the heal cleansing mantra that the firebrands have. You can use this one whenever there is a lack of healing or cleansing in the sub squad. For example, you don't have a scrapper in the sub squad, you don't have a tempest that play that role. Maybe a spellbreaker could play that role, but it would need some help. So you can put that skill there. Normally, for our build, we use advance so that we have access to that Aegis, which is almost 40 seconds, and then swiftness as well. Now, there is also the other sort of skill that is quite useful here is the Signet of Mercy. This is for more advanced players. So, for example, somebody is down on the marker in front of us. We can use the Signet of Mercy on top of them, and it will res them right away. Now, the skill is a little bit hard to use. It has a 2-second channeling time, so you need to anticipate when people are going to go down. This takes some practice and experience, and because it has a very small range, sort of range from the center of the circle is quite small. It needs to be right on top. So if you're not comfortable using it, use another skill. Don't waste that. It is also for high value targets because this is on a 90-second cooldown. So if you use it on a greeny pug that's not in the squad, then you've used up a very powerful skill for a very small return. The reason is that greenies that are not in the squad are going to be the last that are going to receive any boons and support from the squad. So it's very likely that they will go down as soon as there's another engagement. There's a couple of other skills that you can use depending on needs. Mantra of Potence gives quickness and might. It's rarely going to be used, but it's there if you need to give might quickly. Generally, it's not used at all. And then you have the two sort of defensive bubble types. You have Wall of Reflection, which puts a wall in front of you, which reflects projectiles. This is good against groups that use heavily projectiles. You can place it in front of them. You can also place it in the middle of a squad as they're passing, because it will stop people that don't have stability and whatnot. This one reflects, so it will also do damage to the enemy if they're using projectiles. Now the other one is Sanctuary. You can place it on top of you, on top of others. It blocks missiles, but it does not reflect them, and it will also do some healing. It is also it breaks bars on lords or somebody with a banner. So if you see somebody with a banner, you can just drop one of those on top of them, and it will eat up their bar in no time. But overall, is not that useful. It is a light field as well, so it can be blasted to generate cleanses, but it's quite small. It has a long cooldown. So, not that useful. Still, it's one of those that, on certain situation, it can be used. The last one, the one we use, is Advance. I did mention it already, and it is because of the Aegis and the Swiftness. Now, basically, it applies boons that have a longer duration than the actual charges recharge, so you can use this out of combat to keep your squad with 100% uptime of swiftness. Just as soon as you have 2 stacks, you pop one. When they get full again, you pop it again. What it will mean is that when you're entering combat, you will always, everybody in your sub squad everybody in the squad will have one set of the Aegis on. They will block the first hit that hits them, and they will have perma swiftness, so constantly faster movement. Now the Aegis is important because when you have Aegis, the first time you block a hit, because of the build, which we'll go over now very quickly, you will proc a second set of Aegis, which means that you're going into combat blocking the first two shots from the enemy. That is before you apply anything at all. Before we go into the build, I will go over a couple of things that we do in combat. Now, staff is the weapon you're going to be in whenever you're at range and whenever you're preparing for combat. Two reasons. First, Empower is a very important skill. You use that skill before engaging in combat to generate might for your sub-squad while not in combat. When we're in combat, there's a lot of professions, a lot of sources of might that come into play that generate might. Generally, there shouldn't be a problem while in combat with might unless it's being stripped often enough. Outside of combat, however, there are fewer sources of it, and this is one of the best, quickest, and cheapest one to get. Especially because that skill grounds you into the spot for the moment while it's being used. So you cannot move. If you move, you cancel the skill. That is important to remember, however, because you can use this skill even in combat, but you have to be careful. If you're pressing your skill and you're moving, you can press the skill and it will stop you in your tracks and start using it. So here it is, for example, I'm moving forward and I press it and it stops me and it starts pulsing. Now, if I keep my finger on the W key while that's happening, it will wait until the skill finishes. However, if I press it by mistake, or I press it thinking that I can get it in, but then I need to move right away, what I can do is you drop and you press a direction to move again, and it will cancel the skill. This is important because even in pre-fight, we're preparing for a fight, we're empowering, and then the enemy surprises us and gets on top of us. Don't wait for the skill to finish, start moving. It does not matter whether you applied all of the stacks of might. The second reason is symbols. This is skill 3 on your staff. This is also used to stack swiftness before fights. Now, in general, you will not need to use it too often, depending on the builds, of course. If you're not using advanced, you will need to use it more often. If you use advanced, you might not need to use it at all. But you will hear tags call for symbols and empowers. That means symbols first, empowers second. The reason is because the symbols are pulsing, and while the empowers is pulsing as well, the symbol will be pulsing on top of them. Well, if you do it the other way, you have to wait for the empowers to happen and then apply the symbols and then wait for the symbols to happen. So it's a much longer process. Sometimes it will be called that way for a reason. We are empowering and we intend to stealth, and so we don't want symbols. However, things change and then we want symbols for the extra swiftness, but we're not going to be stealthing. So please be cognizant of what the tag is asking of you. Whenever they're asking empowers, it does not necessarily mean automatically symbols as well. Be very cognizant of that, because if you start dropping symbols and in the next moment they ask for stealth, there's going to be a lot of light fields that are going to be a problem. Now, having said that, if that happens, that you have light fields at your feet and then you need to stealth, well, the stealth circle is much bigger. So you can blast to the side of the symbols and still get the stealth, still get the combos, and still get the stealth out. So if you see those symbol circles and you're blasting, blast to the side of them. Also, the smoke fields of the scrappers are around the scrappers and move with them. So, for example, we're stealthing over here. There's a lot of symbols. Well, we can just move a couple of steps to the side, and then stealth over here and blast over here. Okay. Your last skill that is important on the staff is your line, which is staff 5. It is basically an interrupt skill. You put it in the way of an enemy squad if they're pushing in. You can put it halfway through their squad, trying to separate them. You can drop it down with a range spike. Whenever a range spike's being called, you drop it in there so that you can help with the consuming stacks of stability. If anybody gets pulled, you basically drop it behind them, and then they can't get back to their squad. So generally on a range spike, you're going to be using that. Sometimes when the enemy is pushing in, your tag will call for lines. That is your cue. You drop the lines in front. It's a powerful tool, and it's an important tool. Additionally, on range spikes, you're going to use your staff 3 and staff 2. The reason is not that you're going to do anything with the cleansing combos you're going to create, or healing, or damage that these skills can generate. They are going to consume the enemy's ages. So you're hitting them so that low cost skills that don't do much damage consume their high value sustained skills, which is the ages. If your skill that does 50 damage consumes their ages, and then they get hit by a skill that does 3k, then you've basically done 3k damage. Simply put, or 1.5k, because it takes another player, so you guys average it. But it is the combination of the two skill that works. You've cleared the way for the DPS to do the damage. Lines are very important for that reason. Okay, when we're going into combat, closer combat, we talked about the empowers. We're going into closer combat. We're popping one charge of your heals mantra because you're applying protection, you're applying resolution, you're applying quickness, and you're generally not going to be using your elite mantra. Before, you used to use it so that you get resolution in there as well, but it is not needed anymore. You're saving that for a later moment. You're popping also stand your ground. That's on the approach when we're pushing in. Once we're in combat, you're switching out of staff. When we're out of range, when we're out of pre-fight booning, you're switching out of staff and you're going into mace shield. And you're generally going to stay in mace shield while in melee combat. If you're not in a tome, you're in mace shield. You will occasionally switch to staff if there's some separation that happens, so that you can drop some more lines, for example. Or staff 2 can do some healing. Combo staff 3-2 can do some cleansing as well, because it basically is a light field that gets blasted. Your staff 2 is your blast. But most of the time, you will stay mace shield if not in a tome. And here is your shield 4. It applies protection and aegis. It does some kind of damage, but that doesn't matter. And then you have mace 3, which is the same. Now, mace 3 has a channel time. You can move with it, and it will stay there as long as it's not consumed. So let it run as long as it's there, because there's no point of canceling it before it's been used. Your shield 5 is a knockback, and it's pretty powerful because it's a pretty big shield. However, when you use it on pushes, you can use it against groups that, you've stripped stability, whatnot. Be careful though when you're using it, because if you use it when we've generated a lot of downs, you'll just knock the downs away from us. And we don't want to do that. We want to group them so we can finish them off quickly. If we pull people together on the marker, for example, or we're moving in, this is not the moment to use it. On the other hand, when we wanna bust up a group, we want to separate them from each other. When we push into them, very good moment to use it, because it will knock people in all kinds of directions. On a bridge, very good moment to use it. It will knock people out. It also blocks any kind of projectiles. So that one, keep it in mind. And it channels as well, so you can leave it for a long time. If you interrupt it before it's over, you press it a second time, it will do some healing as well. Tome 3, your mainstay of the tomes. Tome 2 has some usefulness as well. I'll go over it real quick, but Tome 3 is the mainstay. There is the 2 main skills. Like I said before, it's 5 unbroken lines. You give 200 toughness for 5 seconds to all the people in your sub squad. For you, it doesn't matter at all. For the scrapper in the group, it doesn't matter at all. For any other support character in your subgroup, it doesn't matter at all, really. It's a really small bonus to them. For your DPS, however, it's a huge bonus. They're all going to be at 1000 toughness, most of them. So extra 200 toughness, that is 20% reduction in damage by default, just from that skill. You additionally give them protection, and you give stability, and you give Aegis. Extremely powerful skill, very important. All of them have generally quite a long duration as well, so if they do not get stripped or consumed right away, they're going to stay there. Now, skill 4, as I said, that one is to impede mobility, impeding conditions. You put it, and for the duration that people have resistance, they cannot be mobbed, they cannot be slowed, they cannot be chilled. That helps to keep the squad from being separated. If they hit the back line with chill, for example, and they run over resistance, they're not going to get slowed down. Their skills are not going to get slowed down. If they get hit with slow, they're not going to get slowed down. They're not going to fall behind. Emob's not going to put them in place, and so on. The other important one here is skill 3, which is the Valiant Bulwark. Now, this one is a reflect as well. It's a pretty big one as well, and you can put it on demand wherever you want. Pretty long range as well. Now, this one is interesting because you can put it on top of an enemy that's shooting projectiles at you. Right on top of them, it will be around them, and all of the projectiles will get reflected back inside the dome, and they'll commit suicide. So this one is an interesting one. It has its uses. Again, it's situational, however. It's not to be used often. Most of the time, you're going to be using your pages on skill 5 and skill 4. Skill 1 is generally for when you need access to stability and you have nowhere else stability to find to help out somebody in your sub squad. It's a very short duration stability. It's only 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds. It will give some swiftness, but the swiftness doesn't matter. It is a cone as well. It goes a little bit further than the other cones because it goes to 600 range instead of 450. However, it's still a cone, and it still has the same limitations as the other mantra skills. So you have to be facing the target if the target is not right next to you. And you can pump a few of them to get more out of it. Tome 2 real quick. This one is your healing and cleansing tome. You're not going to be into it too often because usually the healing job is being taken care of a scrapper or a tempest in your subgroup. However, whenever there is a need for additional healing, peak cleansing, and you're out of tome 3, you can go into tome 2. You start with skill 5, Eternal Oasis. This procs additional healing from you, and it converts 2 conditions into boons straight up. So in this case, any conditions that you're converting into boons, you're not taking away from the scrapper's job because they're still converting other conditions. You're still doing the same job, so there is no loss in benefit to the squad in that essence. If cleansing is being done in another way where conditions are taken away, rather than the scrapper transforming into boons, we have loss of benefits to the squad because of it. That's why we want to limit the cleansing to whenever the scrappers are unable to, and primarily use skills that will actually create boons out of conditions so that benefits to the squad are not diminished. Skill 4 is the big one here. It's a big well at your feet that can be blasted. It's a water field. It has 5 pulses, and it heals on top of that. This is basically the recipe for a burst healing. You drop one of those, and then that gets blasted. It can heal up a squad in no time. It's a good one to drop on top of wells, for example. If we're caught in a situation where we have to sit and fight, they're dropping wells on top of us, we can drop this water field and start delivering damage at our feet. The blast will do a lot of healing, and it will counter the wells to a degree. Now, it's not necessarily going to be able to sustain through a whole barrage of wells, but it will help sustain long enough to reposition, for example, or long enough so that we start dropping them down first. The other skills are not as important. Skill 3 gives some boons, which vigor is the most important of them. That lets you recover your stamina quickly for dodges. Regen and swiftness are not as important. There's a lot of other sources of regen generally. Swiftness should not be a problem overall. Usually it's not worth using this in terms of your pages unless you have pages left over and you're going to be leaving your book 2. Then you can pop it. It sets it on the ground, whatnot, and you keep going. Skill 1 is a on-demand heal. Again, if you're leaving the book, you can just spam it to get out some heals in front of you. And if you need healing on demand, again, it's cone-like, so you have to be facing the target where you want to deliver the heals. And skill 2 does a little bit of cleansing. If there's a specific need for extra cleansing, you can use it. It spins in the spot. I'm outside of my book right now, so I can't demonstrate it, but it basically spins. There it is, and it does cleansing on the spot. And it does some healing, I think, as well, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, per condition removed. Again, it's more situational, and you're not going to be using it very often. Very quickly, Tome 1, you're not going to be into this tome very often. Generally, you'll be in it on mop-up situations. The only really valuable skill there is your skill 3, which is a pull. It does not pull from too far away. But it can group downs together. It can pull people that don't have stability. On mop up, it's good to go into Tome 1. You pop 5. It applies Ashes of the Chest to people in your sub squad. So anything they hit applies burning, and from that burning you get tags. So this is more to get bags. Skill 4 does some bleeding burning, and it's a fire field. uh, and skill 2 and 1, basically a little bit. You're not going to be doing much damage. Whenever you're going into this tome, you're going in for a couple of seconds at most, or when we're mopping up. So tome 1 is generally not one that you will be using. I would say, as a newer firebrand or getting used to things, don't go into tome 1 at all. As you get better, as you get more comfortable, you will find the times that you can sneak into tome 1 to get a little bit more use out of it, or some tags. Now, I'm gonna let's see how this was done. If I can ping the build. How was it? Was it with shift?
Yes.
Okay, hold on.
Shift and control both do it.
Oh, shift and control. Okay.
Not both one or the other.
Oh, one or the other. Okay, let me try this. Nope.
You gotta click on the actual build tab.
Yeah, the build tab at the top of the menu.
Yep, you got
Is that the right one?
That's the heal brand, it looks like.
Yep.
Oh.
Okay, that's the right one. All right, so quickly over this. This is the build that we use. This is the guild build. Now, in terms of ages, because of the change to the heal mantra, there isn't as much ages. So in time, we might move back to a heal brand situation, but mostly right now, we're still using this, and I'll go over the things about it real quick. For me, this is the most OP build for Firebrand right now. Now, there is a condition to it. You do need to have another person dedicated to healing and cleansing in the subgroup for this to be fully viable for the sub squad. Otherwise, you might not have enough healing. Now, even though this build is not oriented specifically towards healing, it still does a lot of passing healing. And in general, the Firebrand strength is not burst healing; it is passive continuous healing. So this takes advantage of the strength of the Firebrand while maximizing other situations. So basically, what the build, I will go over the different trait lines real quick, starting with Honor. This is for Invigorated Bulwark here, and for Pure of Heart. Here's the situation. Invigorated Bulwark essentially increases your healing every time you block an attack. Because you're generating a lot of Aegis, you should generally have that high all the time, and that means you're healing more. Now, on top of that, you have the Selfless Daring, which is a passive trait here. That means every time you dodge, you're healing allies around you. So keep that in mind. Your dodges are very valuable. If you're sitting under a wall, you're sitting at a gate, and there's siege going down, don't just sit in one spot. Use your dodges from time to time just to augment the amount of healing you're outputting. The Pure of Heart is a very important skill. For the reason that every time an Aegis you have applied, whether to yourself or to somebody else, and that Aegis blocks an attack, it also heals. But it uses your healing power to heal, even if the Aegis is on another player. So, for example, you give Aegis to your DPS players. Whenever they get hit and they block that attack with that Aegis, they get healed using your healing power. In this case, 750. Of course, when you have Invigorated Bulwark and whatnot, that will be a little bit higher as well. Still, that is a very high passive healing. Considering that you can apply quite a bit of Aegis, you can actually deliver quite a bit of healing through this mechanic alone. Now, purity of body, you get vigor. You recover your vigor a little bit quicker, so you can dodge a little bit more. That's good because it feeds into your selfless daring. More often you can kill. Now, on the third one here, I have force of will on me because I'm the tag, and this gives me extra 300 vitality. And extra 10% healing to others. But for it, not only that, it increases healing to others per 100 vitality. It's a very strong skill and increases healing a lot. There is another option here as well, however. The other option is pure voice. Generally, if you're not the tag, you do not need the extra vitality. You will generally be the most tankiest player in the sub squad, and so if you're dying, everybody around you usually is either dying or is dead already. So you don't necessarily need the extra vitality, and because you're not necessarily the first healer in the sub squad, you don't necessarily need the extra healing from this skill. So this is a skill you can use whenever there is a lack of a healer in your sub squad. You can just switch to this, and this will increase your healing output just without doing anything else. Now, the pure voice, what it does is it adds a additional bonus to your shouts, which is advance and which is stand your ground, which will convert a condition into boon. It also reduces their recharge by 20%. So you will have your stand your ground more often, and you will have your advance more often with it. And this is generally the one I would recommend if you're not a tag but running a firebrand, an Aegis-oriented firebrand, because of the cooldown reduction, especially for stand your ground. That's 6 seconds less, and in a fight that continues a minute and a half, that is an extra stand your ground in there, and that's quite a lot. Force of will make you a lot tankier. Like if you switch between the two, you will see that just putting it on, you get an extra 3k over 3k HP. It's quite a big chunk, and it does increase your healing by quite a bit. Generally, it should increase it by about 25%, at least. The second one is Valor. Now, this is not the Healbrand trait line. This is specifically for the Aegis Firebrand, and it's here for a couple of reasons. Now, first, when you get dropped, this is the passive trait, Valorous Defense. When you get dropped below 50% HP, you automatically gain Aegis, and that procs a whole bunch of other things. But that's a small one. The first one that you choose is really not much there that you can use that's very valuable, because you're not going to be using a focus, and you're not using any meditations. So therefore, you're using the Strength of the Fallen, which means that if you go down, conditions are removed. Health degenerates slower. Usually by this point the fight is over, but because there is nothing really that you can choose here, that's why you choose that. Now the key ones are Steadfast Courage. For you personally, you gain protection whenever you block an incoming attack, but the more important one is Communal Defenses. Now there is a different one here, also Strength in Numbers, which is also powerful. However, Communal Defenses, what it does is every 15 seconds, when you block with Aegis, it applies Aegis to everybody in your subgroup again. So going into combat, remember I was saying that you have Aegis, you get hit, you proc second Aegis. So the first two hits are being blocked. After that, you have skills. Shield 4, that's another set of Aegis. Mace 3, another set of Aegis. Advance, you have 2 charges. That's 2 more sets of Aegis. That's 6 sets of Aegis that you can consume in a very short period of time off the start of combat, which means you generally can purely block through if you can deliver it well enough, quickly enough, time it well enough. You can basically block their first bomb. So that is how powerful Aegis can be. The alternative here is strength in numbers, which gives another 100 strength to everybody in your sub squad. This one procs every 3 seconds, and it lasts 6 seconds. So this one's generally permanent if you have it set up. As soon as you get into combat, then everybody in your sub squad has a 10% damage reduction. The DPS, I should say, not everybody. In addition, you have the Tenacious Defense, which is the second key, very valuable trait in this trait line. Now, the Tenacious Defense, every time Aegis that you grant, which means not only the Aegis on you, but any Aegis you grant to anybody in your sub-squad blocks an attack, it recharges your Tome 3 by 1 second. So again, we went over 6 different sources of Aegis that you can get within the first 10 seconds of a fight, and that is before you even go into Tome 3. So, for example, if you've used up your Tome 3 and is on cooldown, and you get through your 6 sources of Aegis that you deliver, that's 30 individual Aegis. If they all get procced, that basically will recharge your Tome in half in no time. And so this is a very powerful skill. Again, it's very dependent on how well and how efficient you're using your Aegis to support your sub squad. So it's not always gonna bring out the result. Don't think this is automatic. It does take some efficiency with the use of skills, and that's not gonna be there necessarily off the start when you start practicing a Firebrand. But over time, as you get better, you will start to feel more of an effect from this. Now we go into the Firebrand trait line. This is pretty much straightforward. There's only one real change here, and I'll go over it last because of that. In your second trait that you choose toward speed. Because it applies quickness at any time you give Aegis or stability. Now it has a 7 seconds ICD, but because you're applying Aegis or stability all the time, generally this will be procced on cooldown. So every 7 seconds you will be applying quickness to your sub squad. Very important. It shortens out channeling skills. And for Revenants, if they have quickness, with every hit, they can be stripping a stack of stability from the enemy that they hit. Very important. The third one is Lore Master. There really isn't a choice here. It lowers recharge time by 33% for your virtues. Tome skills, you can't have anything else here, really. That's the only one. Now, the first one, there's 2 options, and that is Liberator's Vow or Archivist of Whispers. Archivist of Whispers gives you 3 additional pages for your tomes, and that is quite powerful because you have only 5. With 3, you have 8, and that allows you to stay in your tome for a lot longer. You can get a lot more out of those tomes because they have a generally high ICD time. However, because of Tenacious Defense, which can shorten the time of recharge for our Tome 3, which is the really important tome for us, we can sacrifice the extra 3 pages and take Liberator's Vow, which now applies a second proccing for quickness every time when you use a heal skill. Now, this was especially powerful until the recent changes when they took away Aegis from the heal mantra, because before that, the heal mantra would proc both Liberator's Vow and Stalwart Speed, and essentially, with one click, with one skill, you can upkeep 100% uptime on quickness. Again, it has a 7-second ICD, but between the two of them, you get 100% uptime quickness if you manage them well. Now, after the change, it's not going to be as easy to do 100%, but 80% is still quite easy to do. Generally, you will be applying Mantra Solace, you're healing, you're applying it for protection and for quickness in this case. You're not using it as a heal skill. That's what you're using it for. Before, it was used for Aegis. Now it's going to be used more sparingly for the boons it gives. So generally, you'll still be outputting a lot of quickness. And this is important because it lightens the load for quickness, or the demand for quickness, off of scrappers, for example, and they can concentrate more on their jobs of healing and cleansing, on top of stealth and all kinds of other things. In terms of your no shit, let me move because otherwise it will. In terms of the build, it's basically menstrual. Everything is menstrual. On your weapons, you have one sigil of transference. You have one sigil of concentration for boon duration. One sigil of concentration on each, and you have a sigil of bounty. The reason you have the concentration and the boon duration is to get your boon duration to 100%. That way, it increases the duration for all the boons you're delivering. It's important in terms of being in Town 5, where you can pop your skill 5 and it will give continuous stability until the skill becomes available again, and so on. It improves the quickness you give out, and you will, once you've charged your sigil of bounty, you will be giving 4 seconds of quickness. So between the two proccings, that's 8 seconds every 7 seconds. That's why you get 100% duration. Now, if you, as a newer player, need extra dodges, switch out any of the sigils of transference for sigils of energy. They will give you extra dodges whenever you switch weapons. So again, dodges are the most important and strongest sustained skill in the game. So if you find that you need more dodges, don't hesitate, do that. Additionally, infusions, they're generally either concentration infusions or healing infusions, depending on the stats you need. In the case of this build, it is concentration infusions. That way we get to 100% concentration. However, if you're going with more heal-oriented build, then you are putting healing infusions. Now, for the runes, there are a few choices here. The one I'm using and the one our firebrands use is the superior rune of durability, because it gives additional toughness, boon duration, and it grants protection and resistance for 3 and 1 seconds on being hit. That's because we're not oriented towards healing off of the firebrand. You can go with Rune of the Monk here, which will increase a lot your healing. That is it, basically. If you have any questions, please ask him right now.
So you're going to keep this under 1 hour, huh?
Quiet over there. I tried, okay? I tried.
It's a lot shorter than it was the first time you did the class, so.
I tried. Any questions?
So you said Rune of Monk is okay, right?
Rune of the Monk is fine, yep, and that's basically for extra healing. You're sacrificing a little bit of sustained personal, but again, if you're going with the healing variant, you can like I said, you can actually adjust and take force of will on the honor trait line instead of pure voice, and that will give you back some more vitality, which will make you tankier, and it will increase healing even further, even without switching from valor to what was it? To virtues. All right, guys. In that case, let's get on our